I have no problem with sex scenes in books I read. In fact, a good sex scene can add a lot to a story. But it's not about the sex. It's about the way the sex is impacting the story. And there are some crazy, even hilarious ways that has happened in some of the books that I've read. I'm going to share the top 10 crazy sex scenes I've come across so far. Hi, I'm Jim with Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Today, just Jim here for this quick take episode, and I'm talking about something that maybe I don't want to talk about with my son. There are some questions I shouldn't ask. But thanks for being with me today. I'm happy to share them with you. I'm going to try to keep this a spoiler light episode as I'm discussing the scenes involved, but not sharing entirely what they have to do with the plot of the stories that they come from. Sometimes I'll even be able to leave out the names of those involved to protect the innocent. But this does include minor spoilers. I'm just going to try to keep them as minor as I can. Okay, let's get to the list. From the bottom, number 10. From the Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, book 2 of the King Killer Chronicle, this one coming out in 2011. I'm talking about that scene where Kvothe has an interaction with a fae that will just love you to death. Okay, here's an interesting character, this fairy creature that they tell stories about. Many don't even believe the person is real, but sure enough, there's this fae, and she just wants to love. But she'll love you so well that you can't stop, you can't get away, and eventually it's going to kill you. Not that she meant to do it, it's just her nature. What a way to go, huh? Now, things take a different twist in the story in the encounter we have that's fascinating. But that whole experience of just going to town and it's going like it always does for her, and then she realizes, wait a second, things are not going the way they normally do, and it's a fun plot device, but still, that was kind of crazy. She's more or less acting like a succubus, and it doesn't work this one time. So, interesting. Number 9. Eon by Greg Bear, 1985 book that was book 1 of the Way trilogy. Now, I actually only read book 1, but book 1 was fascinating. Why is it on this list? Okay, well, there is this thing out in space that humans have discovered, and they send a team out on a long voyage to try to get to it and investigate what it is. And finding out what it is and the whole discovery there is the crux of the story. But on the journey through space, some of them are asleep, hibernating. This is a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was. And just 2 of them are still alert and manning the ship. I think it's an American guy, Chinese woman, because this is an international mission. And he's really attracted to her. And at one point, she notices, and he seems to be like not entirely focused. And she literally says to him at one point, "So, would you like to have sex with me?" And he's like, "What?" "Well, I can see that you're distracted and not acting at optimal proficiency. So perhaps we should take care of this and then you can focus again." Not how he expected this to go. This does lead to a fun interaction between the 2 of them, and then they can get back to work. Like, okay, I did not see that coming. I believe I read this as a teenager. And I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah, it was interesting. Number 8. Coming from The Wastelands, which is book 3 of Stephen King's The Dark Tower epic fantasy series. We have an experience here where one of the characters traps a demon with sex. Okay, this demonic force is in the way of what they're trying to do otherwise in the story, and they have to keep it occupied. So this one character has sex with the demon, and the demon is going to completely destroy her with this. That's what it does, except that's not what happens. She doesn't let it go. She controls it, holds it, forces it to continue to engage with her until they're done with the other tasks that they need to do. She barely survives this, but does survives, and the demon runs off whimpering, if I remember, more or less, in a supernatural way. It was interesting to see a demon humbled by a woman who just controlled the situation. Number 7. Again, Stephen King, but we're going to take a darker turn on this one. This is from Gerald's Game. If you've not read this or seen the movie, ooh, this is kind of dark. And it's a mini spoiler, but it's right from the beginning of the movie and book. So, I'm not really ruining it. This just sets the stage. You've got a couple that are trying to continue to make their marriage work, and they go off on a romantic getaway where the husband gets out the handcuffs again. He's been trying to kind of spark the relationship, the physical thing again between the two of them. Jessie, has been going along, but it's not really her thing. This time he gets her all strapped up to the bed, and she's like, can we take these off? I'm really not feeling it. And Gerald ignores her, basically playing along that she's just, it's role play. And she's trying to make him stop. And so he's going to take on the role play character of the dominant, basically rapist, who's going to do what he wants to her because he has her in his power, which is very dark, very gross. And she agrees. So she kicks him in the family jewels because her feet and legs aren't trapped down. Well, he takes that hit really hard. Men, you know what that feels like when unprotected, you just get nailed. And it hits him so bad, the shock is so hard, he has a fatal heart attack and dies. Boom, right there. Leaving her chained up to the bed with no way to get out. And that's where the story goes from there. Again, a very dark situation, but that's some crazy sex. They didn't even get to the sex part, just the foreplay. And it went badly. Let's go to number 6. I'm going to turn to one of my favorite series for this one, The Wheel of Time, and I'm going to book 9, Winter's Heart. This series, written by Robert Jordan, 15 books in the series. This is the point where one of the characters who has pined for another character, so one of the women who has had her eyes on one of the primary men all along, finally gets her moment and gets to sleep with him. This is part of her intention to totally, she's an Aes Sedai, so totally connect with him fully, physically, mentally, even as a warder, bond him, all that. The problem is when they go ahead and then have sex, she loses herself in the experience. And there are 2 other women who are psychically connected to her through the power, through the bonds that they've done. And they're feeling everything and they can't take it. So they go and get drunk together. It's the only way they can block out the passion. It's a very awkward and funny moment. Imagine that. You get to experience it all from the side, not just see it, not a voyeur. You're feeling what she's feeling. Oh, yeah. Okay. Ooh. All right, let's move to number 5. For number 5, I'm going to Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. There are multiple sex scenes in these 3 books that I could reference, but for this purpose, these crazy sex scenes, I'm taking the one from near the end of Before They Are Hanged, book 2. The hero has returned from a long and perilous adventure. He has come back and returns to the home of his love, hoping she has waited for him. She has pined for him like he has pined for her. He has dreamed of her. This is the one thing that over the terrible experience he's had, he's clung to, that when he returns, she'll be there. And showing up at her house, she's there. She's drunk. She is in a bad way. She has not been thinking, oh, our reunion. She's been dwelling on how horrible life is, how miserable she is, and how he's clearly too good for her, the returning hero, and she's just her. They have sex. It's angry sex. It's sloppy sex. It's physical, dirty sex. And they both, well, I mean, they have sex. Afterwards, it's not what either of them wanted, and that's pretty much where things part ways for these two. But dang, that was a physical altercation that is not what he was hoping for. It's also kind of icky. Number 4, I'm going to return to the Wheel of Time just one more time. And this one I'm going to A Crown of Swords, book 7. And this is the one where Matt Cawthon, our famous womanizer, chaser of women everywhere, flirt extreme, becomes the plaything of a queen of a foreign country where he happens to be visiting on business. For example, she ties him to a bed and takes full advantage of him. It's awkward because expectations are subverted here. In some ways, Matt is living the dream, but the things he's getting to do with her, he has no agency in, no control. She treats him like an object, like something she can enjoy and use and do whatever she wants to at any time. This is never healthy in a relationship. But the way Robert Jordan writes it, it's kind of almost like, well, Matt, you got what you always wanted. It's not all you were hoping for, is it? And while the guy's having lots of sex, he's doing everything he can to try to get out of it. No one will help him, at least for the most part. They're like, sorry, Matt. And in fact, some of his friends are like, yeah, you dirty thing. They can't even assume that the way things are going between the Queen and Matt are the way he's describing. Because she wouldn't do that. But yes, she is. Okay, that's some crazy sex. Number 3, perhaps the craziest of any that I put in here, comes to us from Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. And it's the sex that doesn't happen that's crazy here. You've got a character, Ciri, who's the one who has been prepared this year now for the God King. She has been prepared for this moment to go before the God King, this mythical, powerful being, and she is a sacrifice to appease his physical needs. And she goes in, takes her clothes off, kneels to await his pleasure. And he does nothing. At first, doesn't even acknowledge her. And this happens for days and days. And the story progresses from there. But she's got this picture. I am going to be his sex toy, his object of pleasure. I must do whatever he desires. And he doesn't desire anything out of her. It's quite a surprise. And well written. Good job, Brandon Sanderson. About as close as, we got with a sex scene in his earlier books. Number 2 comes from The Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. Specifically, I'm referencing the first story, Dragonflight. And we're talking about the mating flight of dragons. How does that have to do with crazy sex? Well, the whole way this is set up is dragons and their riders are psychically bonded. And when the queen dragon rises in a mating flight, a whole bunch of the male dragons will rise up after her, and the one that's strongest and fastest is the one that can catch her, and they have sex. And then they are a bonded pair, at least until the next time she goes into heat. If someone else catches her, then she's got a new bond. But usually the same dragon catches once the first time happens. But the crazy part is, because they're all psychically connected, you've got the woman whose dragon is flying up for the first time, and she's surrounded by all the men whose dragons have chased, and they're all waiting to see which one of them gets to have sex with her. because the humans will bond as well, and they won't even be able to control it. Just as the dragons are passionately engaged, the humans become passionately engaged. It's kind of icky when you have this group of men all surrounding the one woman, but it's what they're raised for. It's how it works. Unfortunately, the guy that she was hoping it would work out with is the one that things go well with. And the rest is history because that's the launching point for the rest of the Dragon Riders of Pern. Number one, I go to another one of my favorite series, The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. And I'm bringing to you Book 12, Changes. But I'm laughing here because there are multiple crazy sex scenes that I could talk about just from the Dresden Files. Again, they never dwell so much on the act of sex. It's what it means to the story. It's the interactions between the people, the awkwardness that maybe comes from it. That's all part of the story. But in this case, in Changes, you've got a character who seals a bargain with a fae through sex. That's how she does it. There's a ritual involved. Okay, that happens. The sex takes place. Seems to be pretty good sex. She's the one clearly driving the act. She's the one that has the power in the situation. He's the one that needs her. So, okay, here's the deal. The fun of this, and what's particularly crazy, is how this particular female fae broadcasts this act, the sealing of the deal, to everyone else in the fae community. All of them basically have a free pay-per-view link to this ritual, much to the chagrin of the guy who made the deal. He's like, you what? They what? Everybody? Yeah, that's funny. That's a funny element in the story, and that's why, okay, that's a crazy sex moment for me. All right, there you go. I don't go for the super dark stuff. I don't go for the horrible, icky, gratuitous stuff. But these things, these are good examples of crazy sex scenes that were integral to the story, were entertaining, enhanced the experience for me. If you've got some others, let me know. Try not to be too graphic. Put them in the comments down below. Likewise, look down in the show notes. All the ways that you can interact with my son Zach and I are down there. Our Discord, there's a server to come join us there, or social media, even our email address. I want to thank our patrons who support us a little bit each month, helping us be able to keep the content coming out to you. I think I'll put the list right there again. Thank you, patrons. And if you'd like to consider joining us and get some extra benefits as part of Fantasy for the Ages, the details are down in the show notes on how to find us on patreon.com. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you next time.